루롱 첸 박사를 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you, Professor Zheng. Thank you, everyone. It's always a great pleasure to come to Inha. The first time I come to this city is 14 years ago. And afterward, about every 2 years, I will come to visit the city. And I would like to call myself one of the witnesses how fast this city is developing and growing in the past decade. So I'm very happy that we have this event today to have some exchange and communication about e-commerce and the global rule setting on this issue. So today, basically what I'd like to talk about is how e-commerce is emerging as an important topic in global economy, and to promote and facilitate the growth of e-commerce, what we need to do to enforce global governments on these issues. I learned that my presentation will have about 20 to 25 minutes. And these are 7 issues I want to introduce first, and afterward I would expect some Q&A and kind of an idea exchange with all of you. So before I start, let me briefly present you some data and figures how fast this e-commerce development is changing our world. First, we know that global retail e-commerce sales has been growing faster than traditional retail sales since 2014. The average growth rate of online retailers already more than 20%. Compared to traditional retail, is a 4% growth rate per year. So we can expect that in near future, the majority of retail sales will be online, more done by online than on offline. But look at the figure now. Of course, these offline retailers still tell the majority, but as I say, in near future, and this is kind of conservative expectation. So now we're seeing that you can see that the blue size improving smoothly. But in reality, it's also possible that we can see some kind of very big jump of online retail sales in next 5 or 10 years. So this is going to be more and more important in global economy. So one of the first two data is based on the projection. So it's based on the model simulation. And the last one, we look at the data in reality, we can see that compared with 2016, the e-commerce sales in the world in 2017, this year, will increase about 23.2%. And actually, we know that in the region, this is China's big e-commerce platform, Alibaba. They have this double 11 sales. So the daily turnover is actually more than 25 billion US dollar just within 24 hours. Yeah. And you can see that this figure actually increased every year. And this is follow some more data. So the first data is by private sector data by eMarketer. They project that in 2018, cross-border, so means e-commerce, occurred between two countries, just like international trade, will reach 600 billion US dollar. And then this figure is actually double than what we can see in 2012. And if we look at the historic data, actually 2014 and 2015, there's a big jump because as we will mention later, there's a technology maturity and also the market maturity. And that's just the moment we see the big boom of this e-commerce development. From 2015 to year 2021, people also expect that the global market revenue will increase from around $1 trillion to over $2.5 trillion. And what behind this figure is that not just new products by e-commerce, but also new services and new business models that emerge to support and promote e-commerce. And on the other hand, there are also e-commerce promoting new service and new business model. And as we know, when it reaches in the service sector and when it goes to the business model, in principle, the potential of growth is no limit. So this is just one more figure to show that how fast this e-commerce market is booming in the last few years. And here from this, I want to also draw your attention the importance of Asia in this figure, especially China, India, and ASEAN countries. We call it emerging Asian countries. Their share in global e-commerce is booming. And the whole region, including the rest of Asia, Korea, Japan, we can see that almost 50% of the global e-commerce activity is going to occur within this region. Well, since our discussion today were mainly from the aspect of international trade, here I just try to summarize some points that how, what kind of implication this e-commerce development is going to affect or changing international trade patterns, and for academics also trade theory and trade policy. First, cross-border e-commerce has introduced new dynamics to international trade. This you can easily see because now the way people doing business and also the people deliver the goods and service traded is already quite different from what we can see 1 decade ago. Since e-commerce typically involves less intermediate, because now with this ICT technology we can easily communicate. We can see easily communication between sellers and buyers from different countries, regardless where they are and which language they use, which background they are from. Then that save these intermediate links. And also with the facilitation of information exchange, payment system, and also the related logistics, we can see that there are more demands, not just for products, but also for services and the related activities is kind of increasing unlimited. When we talk about e-commerce, many people will know that there's B2B, also B2C, also the e-governance, and now we also know C2C, these activities. But as I said, one of the reasons we can see this big boom of e-commerce since 2014 is actually the kind of a facilitation of B2C activities. B2B e-commerce exists already a long time ago. And this is something we know that behind we call the global value chain is the technology progress in ICT sector that made production easily fragmented and then distributed across different locations in the world. So before we can see that there's a separation between the production and consumption, but with this ICT actually and related global value chain, we can easily see the production be fragmented and distributed in different corners of the world. But since 2014 and 15, the easy to use this computer software, smartphone, and the ease of these e-payments actually allowed consumers to directly contact with producers or service providers. So we see that this kind of two legs of e-commerce, they kind of moving together. one point I would like to draw your attention is that before, when we talk about this global value chain and the effect of ICT behind this global value chain is that we believe ICT can encourage producers to fragment the formal integrated production in kind of a sub-stage production. But recent literature highlight that ICT actually have two opposite effects. We call it IT effect and CT effect. IT effect is kind of information technology, the way we use computer, we use the computer software in our production. So actually the use of IT improve our productivity. So actually now we are capable of using one labor to take more tasks than before because we have support from computer and this AI technology. So this is a tendency to kind of encourage production to concentrate in kind of, or we can call it kind of integrated in some identical spaces or some identical locations. But on the other hand, there's also CT, we call it communication technology. This is kind of the way we talk to each other remotely. We use Skype, we use WhatsApp, and we use remote video conference to coordinate our production in different places. And this is the kind of driving force to put the production more dispersed than before. So just be sure that behind this B2C e-commerce is actually these two kind of, we call it opposite driving force, but in reality, these two opposite driving force actually push forward of this global e-commerce to move to a very identical destination. That is the increasing importance of this e-commerce in global trade. And based on this understanding, we know that especially for Asian countries, why we do international trade, why trade is important, it's because trade can help Asian countries to develop faster. And this will be also true for many developing countries. Of course, international trade is not the only solution to promote development, but it's one of the very effective solutions, as we can see either from theory or from the empirical evidence. So here, we want to highlight that this actually the fast growth of e-commerce could be a double-edged sword. So on the other hand, we know that with this economic digitalization, now it's easier to do trade. Even you are a small business, even you are just starter, you can benefit from the technology. Easy for you to start your business. And if you have a good idea, you have good strategy, but you have lower kind of threshold for you to grow faster and grow stronger. But on the other hand, we also know that technology is improving so fast. And there's also possibility, we call it digital divide, you must know that. So from the national perspective, that means there's technology progress to push you to move fast. If you do not do that, the development gap between you and advanced economy could be wider and wider. So there's no conversion unless you catch up and you adopt the right strategy to grow faster. And in our context, that means you need to find the right way to grasp the opportunity brought by e-commerce or digital economy, and at the same time realize the challenge and find a solution to overcome those challenges. But on the other hand, for advanced economy, because this disruptive technology progress, that means it could be changed the picture overnight. You need to always keep in mind that you are the front runner today doesn't guarantee you will still be the front runner tomorrow. So it's kind of a push everyone, not just developing countries, but also developed countries. So here is kind of well argument. So that means no matter you are advanced economy or you are just emerging economy or you're just less developed countries, you should keep in mind that there's opportunity there and also challenge there. And the solution is that you need to find the right solution and continuously adjust it to this technology and market changes in order to make your economy more competitive in the global market. So when we talk about trade and development from global perspective, we know free market is a good thing. But one thing to guarantee free market or to guarantee people can have fair play in this free global market is that we have certain rules and regulations. As we can see, especially for online business, because there's kind of a virtual world in parallel to the physical world about this online business. So there's a possibility that if we don't regulate this market properly, this will give birth to some sort of, we call it gray zones of international trade, because there's some new things, new models, and or new activities that the lawmakers didn't expect when they made the laws or when they made the international governance. So there's a new issue associated with this new growth phenomenon. For example, there's tax evasion. People may use the, we call it bitcoins to kind of have this money laundering, we know that. And also this fake product. People can sell imated products online, and then there's less regulation or less way to kind of eliminate or control this kind of, we can call it, we cannot call it illegal, but kind of a non-legal activities. And also there's also big issue is the violation of IPR issues, because now it's just with computer technology, it's simply just so easy for you to copy and imitate knowledge and skills. So one motivation, or the biggest motivation, is that we need new rules and regulation to improve trust, security, and facilitate the online e-commerce activities. And as I said, one of the reasons is that a fair and competitive regulatory environment is needed to foster e-commerce activities. Some people may say that, okay, just everything free, but that may be good for short-term development, but in the long term, we are going to expect some kind of market distortion in this online market. So it's necessary for us to have more effort to have these rule settings and regulatory harmonization on global e-commerce activities. So need the rules, then I guess to most of you, then the first question is what kind of rules? What do you mean rules? So of course, rule settings on e-commerce is very broad concept. Here I just highlight some typical issue that now many policymakers and also private sector, they are discussing a lot. So how to have rules to facilitate trade, how to use, how to have this regulatory harmonization to enforce or to improve the IPR protection, and also taxation is also a kind of hot debated issues among countries. But at the core is that how to protect consumers in this digital economy. In related, there's two issues: cybersecurity and also data protection. So trade facilitation. And this is rather easy for us to understand. We know that e-commerce, we do business online. But when we deliver the products and service in trading, we still need a physical world connectivity. And in this regard, e-commerce is not that different from traditional trade. So if trade facilitation is important to international trade, it's also important to e-commerce activities. So that's the reason we say that for e-commerce, transactions are subject to almost all issues that apply to other forms of trade. There's no exception, nothing exception. And then we know that to facilitate trade, we need to improve connectivity, to improve the infrastructure, and also remove tariff and NTM, tariff and non-tariff barriers, or we call it non-tariff measures, and also to simplify customs, inspection or taxation procedures. This is actually also part of NTMs, but we just highlighted. So this all in all issue, we also need to work on to facilitate this e-commerce, we call it cross-border e-commerce. And the second one is IPR protection. IPR protection is not a new issue. It's kind of a very old one, very difficult to solve one. But people highlight this issue today because digital transaction involve intensively these IPR issues, because there's a kind of a visual online world and you don't know what is going on there. And with new technology, it just simply made the cost of technology imitation so low. Marginal cost very low and so easy. Plus, if we look at the kind of the core property of digital economy, we know that it's very technology intensive. That's the reason we also call digital economy as kind of a knowledge economy. So if you have a good idea, if you have kind of a cost technology, you can easily do business in the world. So, and if this kind of intangible asset cannot be properly protected, then you can imagine how uncertain or how insecure this market will be. So IPR is one of the key issues we need to pay much attention. The next one is taxation. Taxation is also very old topics, but at the beginning, because they're limited of technology, simply even you have this motivation from the government, motivation from international organization, technically it's just difficult to talk about it. And plus, when there's B2B activities, it's easier for the government to kind of tax the business. But when it comes to B2C or C2C, then the question becomes, whom are you going to tax and how are you going to make sure you are fair and effective to collect tax? In Asian countries, we know that Thailand and Malaysia, they're working hard to kind of set up this kind of rules and regulation on taxation, especially on this cross-border one. And globally, we know that OECD has for a long time worked on this issue. But from the perspective of development, we can still think that taxation is kind of a more kind of related to the long-term growth, because it is related to how you kind of generate a good business cycle, so can move on and on. But as you can see, that this is kind of an old topic, but still very limited information and very young topic there. You can see that some terms they use, even some terms used by OECD is very actually ambiguous. For example, neutrality. What is actually neutrality? And we talk to many experts, and different experts may give you different understanding or interpretation. But I think compared to taxation, probably more important one is the consumer protection. As we mentioned several times, that this e-commerce involves buyers and sellers in different countries. And those countries are governed by different laws and regulations. And they use different currency, this is technology, and also different language. So there's kind of a nature barrier to create misunderstanding. And here, one way to protect consumer, or on the other hand, also protect producer, is that how to minimize and how to avoid the happening of those misunderstandings. And here, second paragraph just give you more example what exactly or what kind of a source of those misunderstandings or those disputes might come from. But simply put, when we talk about consumer protection, is just to improve the trust between the parties involved in cross-border e-commerce. And one of the priorities is try to offer accurate information. So at least you make sure the information you get is real, is true, is not fake information. And also, for example, the price, the quality of products, and also the certification of products, rules of origin, these kind of things, etc., etc. And no matter what kind of approach you adopt, the ultimate goal is try to ensure the interest and the welfare of consumers. In related to consumer protection, two direct topics is first cybersecurity. So in international trade and e-commerce, cybersecurity, we mainly refer to the security of this online marketplace. So even there's a trust between buyers and sellers, there's also a risk that even you trust each other and you are honest to each other, there's kind of a disturbance, a potential disturbance or threat from third parties where you don't even know, in many cases you don't even know where they are and what they want to do and what they do. So cybersecurity is to try to make sure that this kind of a situation will be under control or limited. So, but there's a dilemma. When you talk about this cybersecurity, that means that there's certain information the government need to monitor, and while how restrictive those regulations the government want to adopt it, if it's not strong enough, then you cannot effective monitor the market and to ensure that people can trust this environment. But if it's too strong, then you actually this activity destroy the free market principle. So to what extent, how to keep the balance in this control and freedom, that's a hot debate topics. And then this kind of consumer protection, also cybersecurity related kind of top topics of digital economy's data. What made digital economy special is that it involved or intensified the information, the way people exchange information, the way people obtain information, the way people use information and generate value added from information is different from before. So how to protect data? Well, this is a very big topic. Here we just highlight some kind of typical topic that the people are talking about. How to first is the localization. We know that there's a proposal from country, especially advanced country, that developed countries should not impose requirement of localization. But there's also argument that no, we need to have certain requirement because this is related not just for economy, not just trade issue, but it related to national security and also terrorists, this kind of issue on and on. And second one is data flow restriction. So what kind of data you allow to freely move across country, because different countries have different reality, different political regimes. For example, if you go to China, there's still certain website you cannot access to. They don't say we block this website, but you click the links, you kind of wait for 2 hours, still nothing there. And you cannot say whether it's restriction or not. And so there's a featuring and blocking, what happened in many countries. And one kind of now people agree, one point that agrees the net neutrality is that no matter what kind of information, you should treat all the information equally. But we know that even the country who proposed this net neutrality, the United States, a few years ago they changed their mind or changed their voice about this net neutrality. And one argument is that they concern more about national security. And this is also one kind of open topic. to those of you who are interested that on these issues, you might dig deeper and follow the progress on this issue. Well, based on this background introduction, let me quickly jump to what's happening in international world settings on e-commerce activities. I think a good starting point is that we call it USTR Digital 2000. These are 24 principles that U.S. Trade Representative Office proposed many years ago. But in my view, even today, these principles are kind of behind or one of the fundamental principles that you can see other proposals, other initiatives, more or less related or based on these principles. So let me just go through all these points because you already will summarize. First, we need to promoting a free and open internet. This is a principle. And then in order to do so, related to trade facilitation, we have this digital custom duties. So here now, there's no binding argument, but it's kind of a voluntary commitment by WTO countries that digital products are duty-free. That's very interesting in many countries that stick to this kind of oral commitment. And also this non-discrimination principle is also related to WTO principles. And enabling cross-border data flows, because this is the precondition to do e-business. If there's no data-free flow, there's no free cross-border e-commerce. And then preventing localization barriers. This is a principle proposed many years ago, but one U.S. foreign policy change, actually this kind of one of the question marks put on this, to what extent that we preventing localization barriers. And should we call them localization barriers or kind of localization requirements? The third one is that bounding forced technology transfers. This is actually related to IPR protections. When you see that the foreign investment in developing countries where the market is not so well regulated, we see many cases that there's a non-economic effort to force foreign investors to transfer the technology to local producers. Then the seventh one is then to protecting critical source code. And this is also a big question in these days because the tendency is the open code tendency. So people are voluntarily want to share. Then how you define the code, source code anymore. And then the last one is the eighth one is to ensure technology choices. So no matter it's related to this net neutrality, that what kind of business, what kind of data you're using, then you have freedom to choose what you like. In principle, that those advancing innovative authentication methods, this is also related to trade facilitation, especially when you go to cross-border one. You need to support paperless custom cleanings and these kind of things. And in Asia, we can see that there's already big progress. One, they adopt this single Windows programs there. And 10th is to remind that highlight the importance of consumer protections, but it's just kind of a very principal one. And then the later network competition also foster innovative inception in production. So to improve the technology, to use the technology to improve the degree of security of the market. And then look at the long-term growth of digital economy. We need to have more adaptive framework from global perspective. And to improve the cybersecurity, they also call for cross-border cooperation, not just a multinational level, but also a bilateral level and even sub-regional level. And they want to this market-driven standardization and global interloperability her reliability is pretty difficult to pronounce, is also try to improve the trust between the buyers and sellers in the market. And the sixth one is also related to trade facilitation. And then this is from the border perspective. This e-commerce activity will also involve this cross-border investment services. So service sector liberalization, investment liberalization is also associated to development of digital economy. And then the next one also related to trade facilitation. And the next one is actually related to trade facilitation as well, try to make these products easier to regulate and easier to certify. And then those issues, OE issues and copyright issues and patent protection and trade secret, also this recognized conformity of assessment procedure. This actually all issues related to international trade, but USTR highlight them because to somehow this digital economy also subject to all those old problems or new problems existing in international trade. So when we talk about rule settings and regulatory harmonization on e-commerce activities, all these are the topics that we should bear in mind. So when we talk about international rule settings, the first three letters, I believe to most of us, the first three letters jump out in our minds, WTO. So that's very easy to understand because WTO is actually the only international organization that stipulates trade rules in a comprehensive manner and can enforce the implementation of those commitments using its dispute settlement mechanism. It's the only one. Then we go to the next slide. So I prepared two slides, what WTO has done or effectively contribute to this global rule settings on e-commerce. So here we can see that WTO realized the importance of e-commerce kind of 3 decades ago, long time, two decades ago. They know this important issue and they try to do something. So in 1998, they already agreed a working programs on e-commerce. And here, I just write down, this is just a copy from the original legal text. So basically what they want to do is they want to establish a comprehensive work program to exempt all trade-related issues to global e-commerce. So very ambitious goal that all related issues, they want to talk about it. And this working program will take into account not just economic, but also financial and development needs of countries, especially those from developing countries. So this is kind of they declare that they realize the important issue and they said that they want to do something. But in reality, well, so far, one can see that the real contribution of WTO, in my point of view, first, WTO provides a very easy, understandable definition of e-commerce, and there's something I like it. They said, when you talk about e-commerce, e-commerce is somehow you can interchange with the concept of digital economy. You can just it's just production, distribution, marketing, sale, or delivery of goods and services by e-means. It's very ambiguous definition, but in reality, it's a very effective one. So before you really distinguish what is what, you know that this is something we refer to and something we need to work on it. And second is that in 2001, in a Doha meeting, so WTO members agreed to they agreed that nobody will pose these duties on digital products. This is kind of an unbinding agreement, but as I mentioned before, interesting that almost all countries till today, they don't post tariff on these digital products. One thing we can expect happening this year is that next month, WTO minister were going to have a negotiation of new rules on e-commerce based on the U.S. proposed demand, based on 6 demands proposed by the U.S. government. So, and this is kind of after many years, U.S. government moved back to the WTO mechanism and tried to set up this new rules and regulation on e-commerce via multilateral mechanism. So this is one thing that maybe we can follow what will happening next month. And for a long time, we know that the main driving force behind this global rule setting on e-commerce, US, EU, Japan. So, as I can see, that you see, there's already almost 2 decades, and I simply just use 1 slide or 2 slides to summarize what WTO has done and what it's going to do. So, so far, most issues about e-commerce are actually mainly addressed in bilateral trade agreements, regional trade agreements, or plurilateral trade agreements. So, and now, as I said, that as well, the one reason we can expect something happening next month is that given the progress in this BTA, RTA approaches, there's one possibility to multilateralize those models and then try to set up a more general and globally applicable rules. And to see this, I prepared a table that I prepared based on the WTO works. So here is, I prepared a table that to list down all, not all, most of those trade agreements, bilateral trade agreements, or plurilateral trade agreements that contain a chapter on e-commerce. Here we have 16. We have 16 agreements, and here on the column we just try to summarize the the topic they cover in the e-commerce chapter. Here, let's look at this TPP one, because so far, as many of you already know, TPP provides the most comprehensive e-commerce chapters, and we can see that to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. For only 13 issues, TPP agreement cover 12 of them, and most of them, you can see the sales with blue background. It means that for those articles, there's kind of enforcement mechanism. That once you commit to an agreement, you need to implement those commitments. So we see that the TPP provide a very comprehensive one, and many scholars would believe that the new global standards on e-commerce regulation were more or less, or to a great extent, based on what people agreed in this TPP agreement. And plus, TPP, the text of TPP agreement is already public accessible, so we can easily go to website and to see what exactly in this TPP agreement. So basically, TPP agreement's e-commerce chapter has 18 chapters. I think Professor Zheng's presentation will give you more details. And exclude the first 2 articles, actually cover the 16 articles about e-commerce. So from the trade facilitation to data protection to IPI issues, those very comprehensive one. The only one that TPP we couldn't see is the transparency. Yeah, this is only missing part we couldn't see. And last slide, since we are here in Asia, and what Asian countries, I mean ASEAN plus 6 countries, now we're talking about this ASEAN negotiation. For sure, there's going to be a e-commerce chapter in ASEAN. But what exactly in the content? Because this kind of negotiation is normally a black box. We don't know what exactly is going on. But here is the information we retrieved from a TOR of term of reference prepared by the trade negotiation group of ASEAN. So this kind of proposal that this expert group submit to the ASEAN negotiation. This is all the issues related to e-commerce regulation. Here we can see that this trade negotiations, the trade negotiators, they are talking about paperless trading. And in order to facilitate digital economy, they are going to persuade countries to accept electronic signatures and digital certification. And in related, we can also anticipate efforts to improve the online consumer protection, online data protection, and also the unsolidated commercial email related to the security and IPI issues, and also domestic regulatory frameworks, because even there's an international rule setting, international rule, you still need domestic support to implement those agreements and to enforce the effort, and also custom duties, and then non-discriminatory treatments of digital products. This is try to extend what people commit in the WTO Doha meeting. And then there's also prohibition on requirements on concerning the localization of computing facilities. And in related, there's also a requirement about the disclosure of source code, so you can protect your property rights. And the end, there's also this cross-border transfer of information of e-means is related to the financial e-payments, and also real-time monitoring, this kind of etc. So this is kind of the articles we can expect in the ASEAN negotiation. And for this, just last word about this ASEAN negotiation, we know that since the beginning of the ASEAN negotiation, people keep saying that, okay, we are going to have this ASEAN by the end of this year, but this 2017, and certainly it's not going to happen this year. And the next round of ASEAN negotiation will be in Singapore next May. And Singapore, as we know, is one of the big promoters of e-commerce. So if, in case ASEAN is going to get born next year in Singapore, one thing we can expect that we are going to see a e-commerce chapter that at least comparable to what we can see in the TPP agreements. So I think I will stop here, and thank you very much for your listening. Thank you.